Hey y'all, it's Tim Miller from the Bulwark. Excuse the voice. We got overtime last night when the Tigers won in Baton Rouge last night, and so I might have been screaming and yelling a little bit at the game. I deserve one night off, but Sunday morning brought more horrors from Donald Trump. And I think another example of why that no matter your policy views, the risk of a Trump administration from the extrajudicial standpoint, from the lack of respect for the rule of law, for the targeting of the foes, from his past unconstitutional behavior, his character, like the risk at that level is just too great. And he gave us another glimpse into why that was this morning on Maria Bartiromo's show on Fox News. Let's take a look.
Let's remember, you've got 50,000 Chinese nationals in this country in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
You've got people on the terrorist watch list, 350 in the last couple of years. You've got, like you said, 13,000 murderers and 15,000 rapists.
Right.
What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful election day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
You know, he's been talking about this enemy from within, for a while now. Just that statement in itself is un-American. It is outside the bounds of how every politician talked about their fellow Americans throughout my life, my parents' life. Maybe there's some private talk about this type of thing by Nixon, for example. But as a public piece of rhetoric, there are other examples, but it is on the very far edge of what political discourse has been for the past few decades. And Donald Trump takes it to this horrific place. So the rhetoric itself is bad enough. This idea that people that don't agree with you politically are the enemy, and that there's this enemy out there plotting to go after God-loving, law-abiding, real Americans, which is just not true. And it has the effect of radicalizing people. So the rhetorical side of this is despicable. But the part at the end shows you just how far this thing could go. I mean, we had the video yesterday. We talked about Mark Milley and his fears of Trump as a fascist threat, as an authoritarian threat. And then here's Trump today saying that these enemies within, these sick people, the radical left lunatics, just to be clear who he's talking about. He's not talking about, criminals or whatever. He's just saying these radical left lunatics, so his political, people that he disagrees with politically, they should be handled by the National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military. We know that he wanted to do this in the first term. We've seen the reports from the efforts to try to invoke martial law and the Insurrection Act during the Stop the Steal. We've seen these requests, people that worked in the administration speaking about how Donald Trump would make these requests. He's saying now that this time he's going to do it, and he's going to have people around him that let him do it. And that is a scary thought, the idea that he would want to turn the military inward, not to protect us from external foes, but to go after our fellow Americans based on their political beliefs. It's a horrific suggestion. It is just fundamentally at odds with the values of this country. And on its own, even without everything else he's done, it is disqualifying. I think it's interesting to pair this with something that J.D. Vance has been talking about on the campaign trail. Let's watch this video of J.D. Vance in Georgia the other day.
The most important person in government, I think, after the president for this cycle is going to be the Attorney General, sir.
So it's interesting. The Attorney General is going to be the most important pick. You don't hear that very much. An Attorney General is a very important job, obviously. A lot of power, there's independence. At least there should be with the Attorney General. We saw under Donald Trump, there was a lot of pressure for that not to be the case. I would think that next time that would not be the case. But it makes you wonder why. Why? Is it this prosecution of the enemy within? Is that the reason why? Well, JD was asked about that when he was doing his rounds on the morning shows by Martha Raddatz. Let's take a look at that.
On the Attorney General,
Sure.
You said on Friday that the most important person in government in a Trump-Vance administration, other than the president, is not you. It would be the Attorney General. Why do you consider that the most important spot, the second most important spot?
Well, one reason, Martha, is just public opinion. And what I mean here is that we really want the American people to believe that we have a fair and equitable administration of justice. If not, the entire sort of system falls apart. You need people to believe that if the Attorney General prosecutes somebody, it's motivated by justice and law and not by politics. And unfortunately,
Would
what
Donald
we've seen
Trump go
under
after
Kamala
his
Harris's
political
leadership
opponents?
Is the
Would Donald Trump go after his political opponents?
Mar-
He suggested that in the past.
Martha, he was president for 4 years, and he didn't go after his political opponents. You know who did go after her political opponents? Kamala Harris, who has tried to arrest everything from pro-life activists to her political
He
opponents.
said those people
and
who
used the
cheated will
Department
be
of Justice
prosecuted.
as a weapon against people. Well, he said that people who violated our election laws will be prosecuted. I think that's the administration of law.
So, he polishes it. He kind of puts a more respectable face on the point that he's making. But if you really pay attention there at the end of that clip, he's conceding that the Department of Justice will target people that were involved in the election theft. But there was no election theft, as J.D. Vance knows. Because every time he's pressured on why he won't say Donald Trump lost, he goes back and falls back on the Hunter Biden laptop as the reason. He doesn't even claim that there was theft. He just claims humana, not enough people heard about Hunter Biden's dick pics, and so it was unfair, and so that's why Donald Trump lost. If you put those two statements together, that he kind of knows that there was no actual election theft, and also that the incoming Attorney General, who's the most important person in the next administration, will prosecute people for non-existent election theft. That paints the picture of a rogue administration that again is targeting foes. Trump is saying that explicitly. J.D. Vance is saying it with a little bit of a wink, and it should be enough on its own to keep these guys out of power. Because who knows what actually happens if you get in there, et cetera, et cetera. If I was coming on here doing these YouTube vids back in 2016, I never would have thought that Jeff Sessions would have been the one brave person to stand up and recuse himself from the Russia investigation and let that go to continue. So, sometimes you're surprised, but their intentions are clear. And their intentions are scary and dangerous. And they should not be entrusted with power. All right, I'll be back tomorrow for the Daily Bulwark podcast, hopefully with a full voice. Go Tigers. And we'll be keeping an eye on anything that happens breaking in the meantime. Subscribe to the feed. We'll talk to you all soon.